There we go. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike Dane with MLS Technology. Having a little bit less issues than this morning with our webinar setup, so we're actually starting on time today, or this afternoon at least. Before we get started with the course content, I did want to run through just a couple basic pieces of information about the actual webinar process. By default, all of you guys are going to be on mute. Since this is a CE credit class, we're going to be doing a little bit of polling here and there to ensure that everybody is actually still here and present and paying attention. But at least for now, it's important to recognize we're not going to be able to hear you. We also can't see you. So that's an added bonus, I guess. There is a Q&A button down at the bottom of the screen. So if you do end up having any questions you would like to ask during the course, use that Q&A option in order to be able to ask your questions. It's also a great place to find out if other people have asked questions as well. You can see any questions others have asked. The chat function, on the other hand, is going to be best suited for any comments, examples, any stories you guys want to share, that kind of stuff. So if you guys are having a question that needs to be answered, make sure that those are under Q&A. If you post a question in the chat, there's a chance I might not see it. I'll still try to answer any questions that are posted no matter where they are, but the Q&A section just kind of makes it a little bit more obvious, and we can hold those questions for later, all sorts of cool stuff. Now, the session that we're going to be doing today is going to be recorded. I'll be getting a recording of that sent off after class is over. Speaking of which, after class is over, we're going to be sending off the CE credit. So if you guys have any issues with getting signed in or staying connected or seeing the content, please let me know immediately. We'll be sending the recording, but if you guys aren't able to participate in the entire class, there's a chance that you will not be getting the CE credit. So I want to just make sure that we avoid that if at all possible, and make sure that you guys are all getting the credit. The CE credit, as mentioned, is going to be sent off so that it will be added to your account before the end of the month. If you guys have any problems with that, we have a new education director here, Jessica Birch. She's going to be the one that's actually sending this information off. We've been getting that information off pretty promptly on our end, but you may notice there might be a delay on OREC's side. So if there's a problem with seeing your credit or not having all the credit that you felt you deserved, you can always get in contact with us. We can find out if you had participated in the class or if there was some other issue, or it might just be that you've already sent it and we're just waiting on OREC to actually apply that to your license, which is almost always the case. I also wanted to mention the buttons. Down at the bottom of your screen, there's going to be a little gray bar which has a chat, raise hand, and Q&A option. So again, Q&A is going to be best suited for any questions that you have, chat for any commentary that you'd like to make. And we have the raise hand option, which is where you guys can actually raise your hand. I'll get you unmuted, and then you can ask your question with your voice. So that's the only way to get unmuted at the moment. I also wanted to point out, if you guys are joining us on a mobile device, iPad, tablet, phone of any kind, you may need to tap the screen in order for those buttons to appear down at the bottom, but they serve exactly the same functions: Q&A for questions, chat for commentary, and of course, all the more important on mobile devices. Instead of having to manually type out your Q&A on some tiny little keyboard, you can always hit that raise hand button and we can answer any questions that you have that way. All right. If you do end up running into any problems, get disconnected, or just need to get in contact with us after class is over, here's our contact information. We have our email address up here at the top and our phone number. It's available Monday through Friday, 8 to 5:30. All right. So I'm gonna wait just another minute. I think we have one more person joining us, but we might be able to go ahead and get started. Perfect. Okay. Everybody appears to be in. Let me do one more thing here. There we go. All right, we've got a poll coming out. This is going to be used to validate that you guys are still present physically and paying attention. I do need everybody to participate in this. I know we've got a couple employees in there. If you guys wouldn't mind, just fill something in there just so we see that 100% of the participants have participated. So it's fairly simple. Just, are you new to real estate? And have you guys used ShowingTime before? The good news is, for those of you guys who have not used ShowingTime before, or maybe aren't as familiar with it, this is going to be a relatively introductory class. So we're going to try and make sure that you get all the essentials that you need, but also have a basic understanding of why these things are necessary. So looks like I got everybody participating. So I'm going to share the results real quick, and then we'll get started with the course content. It appears that most of you guys actually are new, or at least relatively new to real estate. But I do see a lot of you guys have actually already used ShowingTime, which is good. Again, we'll still try to make sure that everybody has a ground understanding, make sure that you have some context for why this is important and what we'll be doing with it. Oh, and Chance, I see that you got your hand up. There you go. There should be a option to unmute on your screen if you'd like to ask your question. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on. All right, so we're going to be starting off with just getting into ShowingTime. ShowingTime is a tool that we have available to us that's going to be a digital showing scheduling system. There's a lot of cool functions within it, and we've got it placed right here on our MLS homepage. Now, just as a reminder, this may be in a different position depending on how far zoomed in or zoomed out you are, but it's always going to be on that home page with a little navy icon with the little yellowish orange dots. Once you guys get in, it's going to be a very basic interface when you first arrive. One of the things that's going to happen is that you guys will have a section there that's saying, looks like you haven't been in a while, may want to check your profile. That's one of the first things that we're actually going to be doing, because if we are going to be setting this up for our listings or scheduling showings or any of the other information that we're going to need to do, we've got to make sure that our profile is up to date and ready for usage. So whether you guys are clicking on that take me to my profile, or this edit profile button, or as a third option, you can click on your name over here on the side, all three will guide you to the same spot. Make sure that your name is spelled correctly. Make sure that you've got a phone number in there. You don't even necessarily have to have multiple phone numbers. I just put in Jenny's number as a backup just in case. But one of the most important things that we're going to need to make sure of is that if you do want to receive text messages about the listings, ShowingTime appointments, or appointments on requests that you guys have put in, if you need text messages, make sure that you have your cell phone number put in there, and make sure that it is labeled as a mobile phone. So oftentimes people will end up just putting in their phone number and then not realizing that it's not going to allow them to actually use their text messaging. They have to make sure that it's labeled as a mobile phone first. Once you guys have this labeled as a mobile phone, there's an option down here that allows you to choose the mobile phone number. And then that's it. Nice and easy. You guys don't have to worry about it. If you guys do have unlimited text messages, you guys can always set this up with the long or SMS notification. But a little bit further down on here, we've got some login information. I'll just let you guys know in advance, you don't really need this. As mentioned before, if you guys are trying to get into ShowingTime, you can do so from the MLS portal, or you can even do it from Matrix. If you guys are in Matrix, there's a link on your homepage under the external links for ShowingTime. Either way you guys are getting in, you should not need a username and password. The only time you're actually going to need the username and password that this is going to provide is going to be if you sign in to ShowingTime outside of the MLS, which again is just extremely unlikely. For those of you guys who might have connected some dots there that we might need a password in order to sign into an app or anything, I've got some good news. We're going to talk about that in a little bit here. But back up here to the top, there's a section here for My Linked Profiles. Again, another reason why we're wanting to make sure that all of this information is up to date and that we have all of our profiles set up is because if we do not have our profiles set up properly, we won't see all of our listings. Just to check in advance, in case this might not be something we even have to talk about, how many of you guys are members of multiple MLSs? Just to be clear, we don't consider this cheating on us or anything like that. We're not trying to make sure that our members never leave us. But if you guys are a part of multiple MLSs, not a problem at all. That's actually what this My Linked Profiles is for, is to allow you to connect any other MLSs into this ShowingTime setup. This will import over any listings that you have in the other MLS that are not in ours, and it'll also make sure that any listings that you have in both systems can be merged into one calendar. But since it doesn't look like we have anybody in here that is part of multiple MLSs, don't worry about this. Just as a heads up, the only thing I wanted to mention about this explicitly is just that we had some people that were setting up other teammates' profiles as if this was going to allow them to do some kind of like team effort or something like that. It does not work. It did break the system, and we did have to remove all of the linked profiles from everybody's account that did that because it was causing some pretty dramatic issues for their listings. So this is only going to be for use if you guys have another MLS that you're a part of. There's going to be some showing preferences and some offer preferences. We're not going to be discussing any of this stuff quite yet. The only thing that I wanted to mention before we move on to some of the other stuff down here is this allow agents to request appointments online. I would recommend, at least for now, to leave this on no. What that's going to mean is that no one will be able to use ShowingTime on any of your listings. If we end up switching this over to yes, the following default settings are going to automatically be applied whenever a new listing gets added into Matrix. Those listings will automatically come over here to ShowingTime. It's a typically very quick turnover. If I'm not mistaken, I mean, it's within a matter of minutes. It's not going to be nearly as long as it was with the Sentry Key showing system. A little further down, though, we've got the buyer's agent showing preferences. So this is going to be the preferences whenever you are showing a listing somewhere else, not your own listing. We're going to circle back around after we've discussed a lot of these options during class. We'll come back here at the end of class just to make sure you guys understand what we're going to be what we discussed earlier and how that's going to be relevant for you. Towards the very bottom of the page, we also have a mobile app access link. What this is going to do is allow you guys to send a link to your email. You open that email on your device, so on your actual mobile phone, and then it'll give you a link to download the app and then connect your account to the app. So there's two different links, one for the download, one for the connection. You do the download, come back to the email, you do the connection. Really simple. If you guys end up having any problems with it, you can always let us know. But so far, this is actually one of the more streamlined processes for getting one of our systems connected to an app that you have on your phone. And this is also where you guys can remove any devices if you have them connected. So I've got my old iPhone 10 that's connected to this. If I need to connect it to my new phone, I'll have to just send that authentication link and we'll be good to go. All right, so done with all of this. If you guys do have a Outlook calendar that you wanted to connect it to, just a heads up, there is a calendar sync option. It's very simple. It's just going to give you guys a .ical link, and you guys can import that into your Outlook account. It'll automatically sync over any of the information, and you could even do this on your phone as well, though I typically recommend, if you're going to be doing this at all, do it with whatever the account is that you guys are normally using for your emails. So if you guys are using Outlook, get this connected to Outlook. If you're using Gmail, get this connected to Gmail. And that way you guys don't have to actually connect this on your phone and then connect it on your computer and then connect it on any subsequent computers. It'll all be synced through an account that syncs everywhere anyway. So this is a very useful function. Again, we're going to circle back around to our settings at the end of class. So let's head back up to our home page up at the top left here. These are our navigation options over here on the left-hand side. We're going to start off here with our home page. This is, again, where you first land when you first sign into ShowingTime. And I wanted to point out that we have two different categories here. We've got showings I have requested and showings requested on my listings. Both of them are going to be delineated by a today, tomorrow, and beyond. And they're also going to have whether the appointment has been confirmed or not. Now, if we see any numbers on here, this is going to indicate to us that, let's say, showings I have requested. Looks like I had one that I had requested for tomorrow. If this had a number here, this would indicate that I still have not gotten the confirmation yet. If I had, it'll appear over here instead. When we click on any of these numbers, it's actually going to bring us to a list of all of the showings that we have set up for that time. At the very bottom of the screen, we have our feedback requests. It's important to recognize that these two sections here are separated by appointments I've requested. So these are on listings that are not mine. And then appointments requested on mine, again, my listings. With the feedback request section, this is actually going to kind of gather all of that together. So we've got appointments that I've done that have requested my feedback, new requests or new feedback responses that are available for review. So I can actually send those feedback requests to my seller if need be. We've also got feedback responses available that are going to go directly to the homeowner if we wanted to verify them first, make sure that they're not, a little bit too candid or harsh or whatever. And then we also have feedback requests that are unanswered by the showing agent, which is actually going to be on our own listings. All right. Now, there's a message system. For those of you guys who had used the SentryKey showing service, you may remember that somewhere along the line, they ended up adding in an extra feature where you guys could do chats with people. ShowingTime was one of the first companies that actually instituted something like that. I actually think this is an extremely useful function. It's just a matter of everybody buying into this. So on the left-hand side here, you're going to see a section called messages, which is our information up at the top here. And the messages are going to be directly related to any showings that you have set up. Now, there's no active conversations right now. I don't have any showings set up for myself or any showings on my listing, so I'm not going to see anything here. But one of the nice things about this is that the messages section is also going to be available in the app. So instead of having to text message back and forth with whoever the agent was that's going to be doing a showing on my property or that I'm going to be doing a showing on their property, I don't have to text them and muddy any conversation that we had already been having or send back and forth emails or anything like that. I can actually just effectively start an instant messaging chat inside the ShowingTime service just related to the showing itself. So it allows you guys to kind of funnel a lot of that extra noise that you might have to deal with normally into just a nice section here. The notifications on your phone will actually come up with something that just says it's a ShowingTime request or a ShowingTime question or a message. So you're not having to worry about, oh, wait, somebody might have sent me something, or there's somebody that's showing my property right now and they might have been asking like, hey, what happened to the dog that's supposed to be here? You can see that message as the ShowingTime message instead. So really handy. Again, the only real catch with this is that we have to have more people that are actually using the message service in order for it to actually serve a useful function. All right. Next section down is going to be our showings section. This is going to allow us to see our calendar. We've got a couple different ways for us to view this information. We've got the traditional month view. We've got a week view that's going to narrow it down so that I can see a little bit more granular view of my schedule. I really like the week view the best. And then we also have a day view. So for instance, if you guys do have overlapping showings on different listings throughout all of your listings that are available, this might be the best view to make sure you see which ones are which and what time frames they've actually gotten carved out for those appointments. But I like the week view the most. I think most agents are going to find this is the most useful option. For those of you guys with either less listings or less activity, that month view might be helpful because it'll just have a little entry here for each of the listing or each of the showings, which I believe, yeah, it's going to end up looking like this. And as you guys can see, it's been a while since we've actually done a ShowingTime class. But anyway, we've got a couple different ways for us to view this information as well. There's some filter options over here on the left where we can turn on or off any of the filtered listings filtered showings on my listings or showings that I had requested. We can also see those broken down here by the listings or broken down by our contacts that we have, which you guys can see there's a contact section over here. I created some seller at some point. This is who is going to have some appointments set up for them, or I can check it on each of my listings that I have in the system. There's also an option to choose whether or not you can see all of the listings or all the showings that have been requested. We switch that off. We can see any of these disappear. Any of the ones that are confirmed will be green. Any of the ones that are requested but not confirmed will be yellow. And any of the canceled or declined ones will be red. All right. Now, there's also going to be a section over here for showings on my listings, which is just going to give us effectively an entry for each of the showing requests. This is also a great place for us to approve any of those if we had not yet done so. There's another section here for making a new request. I'm going to show you guys a far simpler way to do this. Whenever we get back into Matrix, there's actually a button that allows you guys to just dive directly into the ShowingTime request for the property so that you don't have to come in here and start typing in a street name or street number. You can just use that in Matrix, and then it'll bring you to ShowingTime when it's appropriate, rather than having to go to ShowingTime, have all of your information available, search for it, then start scheduling. It's a little bit slower that way. Finally, we have a section here for showings that you have requested. Just like the on my listing section, it's just going to be an entry per request. Easy peasy. We're going to circle back to this showing cart at the end of class when we're talking about how to do appointments. Showing cart is effectively a showing tour that you can put together, and it does not require that the person that's actually going to be listing the property to use ShowingTime. You can actually put together the showing tour, but we're going to talk about all of that a little bit later. So the most important thing that you guys need to know is how to actually get your listings set up and make sure that they're available in ShowingTime so that people can actually schedule for them. That's all going to be found under this listing setup section. When you get into the listing setup section, you're going to notice that you have any of your listings that you had previously set up, whether you were using ShowingTime or not, actually appear in here. The good news is that it's also going to keep up to date. So for instance, this particular property is still active. That's the information that it received from Matrix. So that's what it's going to be showing. If you need to make any changes to this, or in our case, I want to make this available for showings, you can just click anywhere on this entries line and it'll bring you into the details for that particular property. Starting off at the top, we've got our address, the listing number. If we need to switch over to a different listing, we can actually switch between them like so. And then we also have a couple buttons over here on the left. Let's talk about those real quick, and then we can talk about the important stuff over here. If you do have a listing that is, let's say, no longer needing to have any ShowingTime stuff set up on it, maybe it's gone pending, or maybe it's actually already sold, there's an archive button here that allows you to get that off of your list so that you don't have it cluttered with a bunch of stuff that's no longer relevant. There's also an option here to merge. If you have a listing that expires, which how many of you guys, just by show of hands, how many of you have actually had a listing expire in the last, I don't know, 2 years? That's kind of what I thought. Yeah, pretty typically not too many. Looks like we got 1 or 2 hands raised. Yeah, it's not as common nowadays, but when it does happen, if you would still like to use ShowingTime on that second listing, so after you guys have renewed the listing, there is a merge option here that allows you guys to connect both of those together. So instead of having to have one listing and then that has all the appointments that had been scheduled on it, all the feedback requests on it, and everything else, and then starting a brand new listing, which has none of that information, you can actually hit that merge button, get both of them connected, and just have a nice continuity to the calendar, the feedback, and all of your settings that you're going to be setting up on this. Merge is also going to be necessary if you guys are setting up a listing in 2 different MLSs, but since it doesn't seem like any of you guys have that problem, you guys don't have to worry, but it is available if you do end up deciding to join another MLS as well. There's a listing activity report. We're going to visit that in a bit. Same thing with listing changes. But we have an attachments section that I wanted to at least point out. The attachments are going to allow you one last opportunity to provide disclosures to people whenever they're going out to do showings. So what's going to end up happening is that after an appointment has been approved, so after they've gone through all the rest of this stuff and they've gotten everything ready to go, when they have their appointment approved, any of the attachments that you've provided are going to be sent along to them. What this means is that if I have a property condition disclosure set up, maybe a lead-based paint disclosure set up, whenever that appointment gets approved, they get an email. It has those attachments on there. So when they go out to do the showing, if they need that information, they've already got it in hand. There's a couple other places where the attachments options will appear. I'll show you guys those when we get to them. But now let's move to the meat of the class. So over here in the center area, we have the showing time for the MLS, indicating what version of showing time you guys have. There is actually an upgrade option. You don't have to use that. In fact, everything that you guys might need to use is already provided through the MLS. There are a couple extra appointment types. So if you guys did end up wanting to get a little bit more granular with how you guys are using the appointment types, you can set it up that way. The upgrade, at least some people have found a lot of utility to it. One of the only things that I think the upgrade offers that I think is extremely beneficial to people is the showing voice service. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute, but effectively it allows you guys to have a real human that's going to be allowing other people to call in and schedule appointments through that human, rather than the automated voice thing that is available. But we'll talk about that robot in a minute. So first things first, right up here at the very top, we've got allow showing agents to request appointments online, yes or no. Right now, I currently have it set to no. This is actually beneficial to me if I'm maybe just setting this listing up, or maybe the client actually doesn't want any showings for a brief period of time. We'll talk a little bit more about showing restrictions, but this is kind of an all or nothing. If you guys set this to no, people can't schedule any appointments at all for the listing. In fact, oftentimes they won't even be able to find this listing in ShowingTime, let alone have it show up in Matrix for them to schedule an appointment with it. Whereas if we switch this over to yes, all of the rest of this information that we're about to go through will be enacted. So let's start off at the top. We've got the showing instructions and our appointment type. There's 3 different appointment types. Appointment required means that when somebody ends up putting in the request, it has to be approved. Otherwise, they won't be able to get in. The good news about this appointment required is that it does not have to be done by the agent. We're going to talk in a moment here about how to add contacts to this. So if you guys like the idea of manually approving appointments, but you don't necessarily want to be the one that does it, maybe your seller is more excited about doing that, you can set up that appointment required. Just as a kind of side note, whenever we were doing outreach training, I noticed that this actually had some regional specificity. We had some people in Ada that were always going to be the ones that did the approvals. It seemed like that just the majority of people using ShowingTime and Ada were actually being the ones that approved those appointments. Meanwhile, when I went down to Durant, it was unheard of for the agents to be the one approving appointment. It was always the sellers that were doing it. So either way that you guys want to do that, the appointment required will need to be approved in order for that appointment to be done. There's also another option. This is going to allow us to effectively say, you can request an appointment. Maybe we don't necessarily want any overlapping appointments, but if you put in a request, it gets approved, easy peasy. That's the courtesy call or go and show option. Courtesy call or go and show is going to allow us to just automatically approve any appointments. You can still set up some showing restrictions on it. So if you guys had timeframes that you didn't want to have appointments, that's fine. You can block those off. But then the rest of the time, they're just going to be putting in a request for a specific time, and it just automatically gets approved as long as it's not blocked out any other way. Finally, we have our view instructions only. This is the absolute most hands-off option. I typically recommend people to use this if it's a vacant land, which is actually coincidentally what this one has, typically used for vacant homes or lockbox or on lockbox. The view instructions only is effectively just saying, look, if you end up showing my property, just let me know. Easy peasy. No time frame. You can do it or not. All I want to know is just that you were having a client that was interested in this. And if there are any changes to the property, the price, whatever, I'll know to let you know that that's been done in case your client may still be interested. So we've got the most hands-on, which is appointment required, a little bit of hands-off with the courtesy call or go and show, and then just quid pro quo of information with the view instructions only. So they give me their contact information. I tell them how to get into the property or give some information about the property. Easy peasy. Now, I'm going to set mine to appointment required just because this is going to have the most options available to it. The other two are fairly simple. Just everything else that we're going to be discussing will be applicable. There is a quick option here. Is the listing agent accompanying the showing? Yes or no. Make sure to mark that appropriately. There's also a feedback request. The feedback request will have a template that you can use. As you can see, there's a default option. That's the office template. And then there's also a bunch of agent templates. These are the ones that I've set up. We're going to be talking about those feedback options a little bit later in class. So we can tell how to get this set up, make sure that we have specific questions that are targeted for this particular property instead of just the kind of generic run-of-the-mill ShowingTime template. The next section down is our contacts. This is where we're going to be defining who's going to be receiving the appointment requests and how they're going to be approving it. It's going to start off by default with just your information, and it's going to allow you guys to do either text message, email, push, or some combination thereof. If you do have a mobile phone set up, as you guys can see, I've already got that labeled on my profile that we discussed earlier. If you have a mobile phone set up, you can do text messaging. If you would like to set this up with just emailed notifications, you can do so. From my experience, I don't think the email option is the best choice. So make sure that you have a cell phone number put in as well, just to ensure that you're getting the text messages. I don't know about you guys, but I don't check my email hardly at all, really, but I don't check my email when I'm on the road. Text messages, on the other hand, I can have my phone read to me, so it might be a little bit better for me to actually receive a text message. I also have the option here to do push notifications. This is one of the most common questions that we get asked. This may be grayed out. If you do see that this option is available, that means that on your profile, you have a mobile device that's been added. The only time you'll have the ability to set up the push notification is if you've downloaded the ShowingTime app and it's available on your phone. As long as you guys have connected your account, you can receive what are called push notifications. So that's what it's actually called on your phone, the technical term for what's happening on your phone. Like if you get a message from someone on Facebook Messenger and it shows the app name and then the message, that's called a push notification. So that's what this is referring to when it says push. Finally, there is an option here for the showing voice. Showing voice means that it's actually going to be a phone call to you. Just as a heads up, unless you upgrade your service, this is going to be an interactive voice recording. I don't know about you guys. I don't really like talking to robots, so this isn't really my favorite option. But as you can see, this is all for confirming the appointments. So when I'm going to be actually receiving a notification that somebody's requested an appointment, I will receive a text message and an email, and I can approve those. Once the appointment has been approved, or if it gets canceled, there's going to be a different set of notifications being sent off. I've actually customized this a little bit by adding in the showing voice option. So the rest of the stuff works the same. I get a text message if it's confirmed or canceled, emails, push, and so on. In this case, I've actually turned on the showing voice. Again, this is the robot, but I have an option to choose between confirm, decline, and cancel, or just decline and cancel calls. As I mentioned before, I'm not checking my phone really while I'm in the car. See if there's something happening, use the voice thing if I need to. But this showing voice option is actually going to put in a phone call to me if a call or if a showing gets declined or canceled. So if I'm actually, coming out to take a look at a property that's been shown, I don't want to actually have text message that told me that, and then I missed the text message, or even worse, an email that was sent to me and I didn't even check my email that day. But a phone call, I'm not going to miss a phone call. So I can have the robot tell me, but I'm only going to do it whenever a showing gets declined or canceled on me. All right. Next, I wanted to point out, again, this was all related to me. If I do want the owner to actually be the one that does the approvals, there's an option down here at the right for add owner/occupant. You do have the option to add somebody that you've already worked with. If you guys have investors, this is great. Otherwise, you're going to have to use this add new option. So again, add owner, add new, put in George Washington. There we go. He is the owner. He is not the occupant, but he does want to receive text messages. So I'm labeling it as mobile phone. Notice if I don't have mobile phone labeled, there's a whole bunch of options that get stripped from the screen. Turn on mobile phone, use for text messages, or do not contact text messages. So 918-867-5309. All right. And we'll put in an email address for him. Perfect. And save. All right. So now I have an owner that's set up. Because I've actually labeled one of his phone numbers as a mobile phone number, you'll notice that I now have the option to do the text message option. If this was not labeled as a mobile phone, or I had labeled it as a mobile phone but not text message, this will be grayed out the same way that push currently is. But if I want him to be the one that does the approvals, uncheck yourself, and he's the only one that's going to be texted. Same thing goes with the notifications of confirmed and canceled appointments. If you do have the owner that's going to be doing the approvals, it might still be good to at least get an emailed receipt, even though you might not necessarily need a text message for it. But again, cater this around exactly how you guys would like it. Just make sure to let the agent or the seller know if you guys are setting up the IVR, because there might be some other people out there that are not particularly happy about the little robots calling. So choose that appropriately. There's also going to be an option on here for new co-listing agents. So in case you guys have maybe somebody that's watching out for you whenever you guys are on vacation or out for some kind of emergency or whatever, you do have the option to add in a co-listing agent. All you're going to need is just their name or ID. Notice this is actually searching within my office. So if I were to type in Ethan, I can see my teammate Ethan Long, get him connected, and without having to go through any extra processes, he's already gotten his contact information put in there. I can use text message, I can set him up with the showing voice, and then I can just turn all of mine off so that while I'm gone, my client will be doing all of the approvals, Ethan's going to be handling, making sure that everything else is done correctly, and I'm good to go. I can go on vacation, be peaceful at night, not have to worry about everything going wrong. A little bit further down, we do have a little explanation of how everything we've got set up is going to work. So this how will this work is going to indicate to us when an appointment is requested, here's what happens, and the notifications will be copied to nobody. After the appointment is confirmed, it looks like he's going to receive the text message or email. Ethan's also going to receive it. Then they're both going to receive a text message, and then Ethan's going to end up getting a phone call if there is an appointment that's canceled. So it allows you guys to kind of parse this out a little bit easier, because I don't know about you, but some of this stuff might get a little bit confusing as far as what the checkboxes are actually meaning to do. So there's that option. There's an advanced notifications option that I'm not going to be covering, but might want to check that out if you guys do want to customize it further. The appointment restrictions section is also going to be fairly simple. We've got either a no same day appointments, which means that today until midnight is blocked out. And I mean that relatively. Every single day, it's just going to block out until midnight as soon as it switches over. We do have another option instead that's called lead time. There's two different choices for this. We can either require a spot to be blanked out. So for instance, this is out in Guyman. That's a very far away from me. If I am going to be doing that listing agent accompaniment, I might need to have a little bit of lead time on that. So I'm going to say I need to have 3 hours of required lead time. And then if I'm, maybe a little bit occupied already, or if there's something else going on, I might need an extra hour. So I can do a suggested lead time that's going to add a little bit of extra time with more of a warning rather than a complete blockout. That's going to be 4 hours. So just to give you guys some context for what this means, you can request a showing on the quarter of every hour. So right now at 1:40, this means that in 3 hours at 4:45 is going to be the next available appointment. Between 4:45 and, in this case, 4 hours from now, 5:45, it's going to have a little message that pops up. So if they request it for 5 to 5:30, cool. What that means is that 5 to 5:30, they're going to click on that. It's going to tell them, hey, you can request this. It may not be approved. I might need some extra time to get out there, whatever the case may be. So that suggested lead time is also beneficial. I typically recommend using both of these at the same time if you guys are going to use them at all. Minimum appointment length and maximum appointment length have been added. I'll be honest, our Sentry Key showing service, we had a laundry list of feature requests that we put in. This minimum appointment length and maximum appointment length were requests that we put into ShowingTime a long time ago, and they already got that stuff in there. So we can choose between either or. So if I wanted to make sure that somebody has either 30 to an hour, or if we don't need to have a maximum appointment length and we want people to just be able to put in any amount of time, you can leave those empty. So also notice we have the option to do 15, 30, 45, or an hour, hour and a half, 2 hour long appointments. So there's a lot more granular appointment timeframes. We really love that. Allow overlapping appointments. The default is no. There is a yes, no need to inform us. Yes, please make sure that we're aware first, and I have to effectively approve that. Or no, no overlapping appointments. There's pros and cons to all of these. Just as a heads up, I'm partial to saying no overlapping appointments. This is more just a security measure. If you have multiple people in the house, that means there's more, as grim as this is to say, more suspects if something breaks or gets stolen. More bodies in the house might also mean that there's some health risks involved. But it's worth pointing out the pros to having overlapping appointments is there's a lot more psychological effect on people if they see that there's others that are looking at the property at the same time. It could be a very good thing to have those overlapping appointments because that could start people on the process of being like, I need to get this before that guy over there who's looking at the same exact property right now gets it. So good and bad on both sides. I'm really partial to not having overlapping appointments, but again, you can set it the way you'd like. We're going to talk about showing restrictions a little bit more in a minute. There's a button here for that. We'll talk about that when we get to the other screen. Access information is fairly simple. We can do secure access enabled. There's a yes or no, and then effectively allows us to set up a certain amount of time. There's a little question mark here in case you guys aren't familiar with that particular process. There's also going to be the access details. This is where you can put in any gate code for the community or for the property itself. You also have the option to choose between a huge variety of different kinds of lock boxes and combo boxes and all sorts of stuff. Since we're using the Sentry Lock system in our association and a couple of the other associations within our MLS, I'm going to just leave it on Sentry Lock, put in my serial number, give it a location to make sure that we actually know where it's physically located. There's also an option to put in a call before showing code if you guys have a capability of that on your lockbox. And then also some access notes to make sure that if there is anything else that you need to mention about the lockbox itself, you can put that in there. There's also a section here for alarm details. If there's no alarm, you won't see any of the extra options. Switch it over to yes, and lo and behold, we've got a whole bunch of choices. Disarm code, arm code, passcode, and then make sure if there is any weirdness to how you guys have to use that alarm system, document that. There's nothing worse than having to go through a house doing a showing when the alarm is going off the entire time. I think last time I asked this was in a little bit larger class, but just out of curiosity, have any of you guys ever experienced that where you've gone to a showing and you can't seem to get the alarm to turn off? we got one. That's unfortunately a lot more common than I wish that it were. So make sure that in this alarm section that you guys always, always, always document what might be necessary in order to make sure that the alarm is turned off. That way, at least if it's not turned off, that's more on the agent than it is on you. Finally, we have our additional instructions. These additional instructions are actually just an open field where you guys can put in whatever you want. Smell the roses outside. Perfect. And then I'm also going to include from these predefined notes, I need to make sure, this is new. I don't think I remember this one. Beware of bad pet. You know what? We'll just choose that one. And let's pretend it's a dog. Pets are in crates. We'll do listing agent must be present. I didn't choose that option. Owner will provide access. Cool. Let's do home is winterized. Please don't use the toilet. Excellent. Add. So notice it actually just took all of that text from the predefined notes and dumped it in here so I can make any changes if I need to. Easy peasy. Now, you may have noticed that as we've been going through this, there's this black bar that appeared up at the top. Since I've made some changes to the property's information and how it's going to be scheduled, et cetera, it's offering me now to make sure that I save those changes before we move on. So if I needed to make any further changes, boop, go, all that. All right, I'm set. So I can either save those changes right now, or we can continue with the showing restrictions. Just as a reminder, the showing restrictions section is going to cover these showing restriction option. The screen that's showing it here is actually just going to show what's coming up. Whereas if we go to showing restrictions, this is going to visualize all of the restrictions that we have, as well as showing those upcoming restrictions. So you can switch between those, either leave it on the simple option here, or we can see that visualization, which, if I'm being honest, is what I need. So up here at the top, add new showing restriction. This is a fairly simple process. It's going to require that you put in a restriction reason. Always keep this vague. I know that sounds a little bit paranoid, but I always like leaving some ambiguity as to whether or not the home is occupied. So in this case, I would just label it no show. Nice and easy. Don't have to worry about them wondering whether or not the person is home. Not that I think that anybody's trying to like break in or steal stuff, but just that ambiguity might be helpful. There's going to be two different options. We've got a timed restriction. You can just grab a specific time frame, 8 a.m. to let's say noon. And then I can also set this up either as a one-time restriction, just choosing simply today, or I can set this up as an all-day restriction or a repeating restriction. So let's say we do end up wanting to block out until noon every day. I can just go over here to repeating restriction, choose my time frame, and choose which days I want to have blocked out. So let's take a look at what this repeating restriction looks like. I do save restriction, and it visualizes that for me so I can see all of the timeframes that are blocked out. I can also go back and make any overlapping ones as well. So like, let's say again, no show. I'm going to do an all-day restriction, and we need to block out Friday. Save restriction. I notice now all day on Friday is actually blocked out. And down here at the bottom, I can see those and make changes to them or delete them. And we can add in several more too if you guys end up having any problems, questions. You can even click on specific days if you needed to make a change to this specific day, all day restriction, no show, save restriction. Done. So make this as complex or as easy as you want. It's all entirely up to you, and it's all going to be dependent on that property, because each and every listing that you have is going to have its own needs. This is all going to be on a listing by listing basis. So if I were to switch this over to a different property using that drop down at the top, it's going to have its own showing restrictions on that page. So if I go to showing restrictions, this is going to have its own. So fairly simple. I'm going to jump back here to our listing setup. And again, if we wanted to move between these, we can either go to listing setup on the side, click on the listing, or we can use that drop down up at the top. Now, let's talk about some extra options that we have here. Over here on the left, we've got the listing activity report. This is going to open up a new menu on the left here. We can see the homeowner version, which is going to effectively parse out all of the appointments and all of the feedback and everything else. We also have a date range. So if I wanted to expand this so that it's actually all the way back to 2019, hit apply, and it's going to include some extra details from previous listings or previous showings. We have a display option where we can choose which parts and pieces we want to include, rearrange them if need be, and hide them if need. There's also an add activity option. I know you guys have probably at least run across this once or twice, but if you do end up having somebody call in and say, I'm not going to be using ShowingTime, I'm not giving my information to Zillow, or I'm not using ShowingTime because I'm not at my computer, or just simply, can you please put this appointment in for me? You can do this add activity option. So just to clarify again, if you guys have somebody call in and say, hey, I need an appointment, can you just put that in for me? Get into your listing, go over here to listing activity report, and then do add activity. All you got to do is choose what kind of showing it is, choose what date it's going to be, choose a start time, choose an end time, and then you have to put in the showing agent. So like, let's say I've got my coworker Mike going out to check it. I'm going to run my search. Got 2 entries for him. Click one of them, add in some notes. Perfect. And then I also have the option here to include a request for feedback after that appointment time is over. So even if they did not schedule this in ShowingTime, they will still receive a ShowingTime request for feedback. Nice and easy. Make sure that you guys end up saving that. And that way I can see I've got a future showing. It's going to be May 5th. Mike's going to be coming out, called in for an appointment. And after that appointment time frame has ended, so after 6 o'clock, he's going to receive an email with my feedback request form. So pretty simple. There is also a send notification option that I wanted to mention. Send notification is going to allow you guys to reach out to anybody that's shown the property in the last 180 days. You can also send to all of the agents in your office. This is a terrible idea. Please don't do this to your coworkers. Copy to all listing agents and co-listing agents might be helpful if you do have a team member or if you have a co-listing agent. And also copy to all listing contacts is going to send it off to any of your sellers. If you do end up having a seller that's going to be doing appointments, they'll see any of those emails that you're sending out to let them know that you are still working on their behalf. The messages that are going to be sent off can either be a price adjustment, letting people know that the price has changed. Notice it's got pre-formatted text, or you can set this up as other, where it's completely blank. So we can say, fence has been repaired. Please send back your buyers to review. Send, perfect. And that'll go out, and I can even see up here at the top, if there is anybody that I wanted to include, whether it's people that have gone out to do the showing. Notice it's got that last showing is tomorrow. And then we also have another recipient email. So if there was somebody that maybe didn't have an appointment that was scheduled through ShowingTime, I can add their email in manually and send off that message to them. You can email the report that includes all of the appointments that have been done on it, all of the feedback that's been done on it, and all of the appointment details. That can be sent off to your client or to a broker or to a coworker, whatever. Another place for us to add attachments, print off the report, or download a PDF of all of this information, which just as a nice heads up, actually does allow us to see all of the information in a nice, concise format, unlike maybe some of the competitors had that available to them. But that's about it. If we need to get back to our listing, oh, here we go. Look at that, nice and pretty. Oops. Let's go back a step. All right, so if we need to get back to our listing, or say back to listing button, and again, we can make any further changes if we need to, but I did want to point out, now that I've made all of my changes to this particular listing, I do need to make sure that it's switched over to yes. Now, I want to show what happens on Matrix when we do this. So for this listing, oops, Give me just a second here. All right. We'll just grab this one instead. As soon as I switch that toggle from no to yes, there's going to be a little icon at the bottom of the photo when people are looking at the listing that's going to have the little showing time icon. Now, what's going to end up happening is that after you change that over to yes and then save it, that little icon will appear. And when people click on it, it's going to allow them to schedule an appointment. Now, they do have two different choices for this. They can either schedule a single showing or they can add it to a showing cart. I'm going to be including a little video tutorial about the showing cart, but again, this is going to allow us to effectively grab all of the information that we might need about all of the listings that we're going to be going out to look at, whether they're in showing time or not. So you guys will have to call and get an approval on any of the appointments that are not in showing time. But then you can document that, add them all into a nice little map, and go through and go check out all those listings together. Again, we'll have a video that covers that. That's going to be sent off with the recording. For now, I want to just schedule a single showing. And you'll notice that in this case, the agent has actually added on, it looks like a suggested lead time of 1 hour. That's this grayed out space right here. So if I tried to schedule this for 2:30, for instance, it's going to say, you have requested an appointment time that may be too soon for us to confirm. Although this may be difficult to set up on such short notice, we will try to make every effort to accommodate your request. Continue, set up my appointment time, and I'm good to go. I also wanted to point out, once you guys have actually had an appointment set up for your listing, a feedback request will be sent off to them. To change those feedback request forms, there's a feedback button over on the left-hand side here. And you can either see the feedback on your own listings or on the listings that you have shown. So if you guys maybe had a buyer go out with you to look at a property and they liked it or they didn't like it, this is a quick and easy way to kind of see a journal entry on that to find out whether or not this was a good listing or bad listing for your client. Also on the left, we have that My Feedback option. We also have this form design and settings. This is where we can go in and see the generic showing time template by default. And we also have the option to see any of the ones that we've customized, or even just create a brand new one. Now, I will say, if you guys are going to try and create a template for a specific property, I would very strongly recommend that you guys just hit this clone button up at the top. If you do end up creating a new template, it's going to leave this first page pretty generic. You know, you can make some changes to a little bit here and there. You can adjust some of these options, but there's a feedback form button up at the top here that allows us to add in multiple choice questions or free text questions. But notice this is completely blank. This is not particularly great. I would have to manually add not only the questions, but each and every one of the answers for it. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to take this showing time template, so the generic one. I'm going to head over to the feedback form. You see that it's got all of these default options already put in there. And when I hit clone, it's going to allow me to save this as something new. So I can say new listing, give it the name of whatever the property is. And then down here under the questions, I can either make changes to this. So if I wanted to say, instead of please rate this listing, I wanted to just do stars instead, I can put that in there. Or I can even just add in another multiple choice question like, is the fence a deal breaker? And we'll do yes, add in another answer, no. And again, because I've set this up as a clone of a pre-existing template, all of these other questions that are at least relatively important to you can be included, and then we just save the changes. And then if I want this particular feedback template to be on a particular listing, go back to listing setup, find the listing in question, and just choose that new listing feedback template. Make sure to save those changes when you're done, and that's it. Just as a reminder, back in our profile, we talked already about how these listing agent showing preferences are going to allow us to apply all of these as defaults whenever new listings come in. So again, appointment required, whether there's appointments overlaps, whether we can do a max number of overlaps. We also have notifications, so I can make sure that if there are listings that are being added, I'm the one that's going to be doing the requests. I'm going to be doing the confirmations, so on and so forth. Same thing goes with these showing preferences. This is all going to be related to how you will be contacted after your appointment has been approved for another property. So make sure to circle back around to these, double check everything is working the way that you want it to. And also, again, definitely take a look at the app. I'm going to be sending some information about the mobile app, but I can't recommend this enough. The ShowingTime app is great. It allows you guys to make some changes to some of the information on your listings outside. So that's it for our class today. If you do end up having any questions, problems, feature requests, whatever the case may be, get in contact with us over at the service desk. Got our contact information up on the screen. I'm going to leave the session running for just a couple minutes here. If you guys have any questions immediately, I can go ahead and field those for you. But otherwise, if I could get everybody to hit that raise hand button, just need to know that everybody's here. And after you've hit that raise hand option, you guys can dip if you would like to. But again, I really appreciate you guys joining us today. Let us know if you have any problems at all. Oh, I see everybody's hand is up. Thank you guys so much. I'll get you guys your CE credit. I don't think I saw anybody that was even having some connection issues today, so that's excellent. Have a good one, guys. Stay safe. Watch out for all that crazy weather going on. And hopefully we'll see you guys in another class in the future. All right, I'm going to go ahead and close up shop. Again, if you guys have any questions, get in contact with us. We'll be here for you. Have a good one.